Hello, welcome back to my next video on Vedic astrology. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the 12th house. The 12th house is the house of loss. This is something that almost everyone knows, so why should I do another video on the same topic? But this video is about not just the 12th house, but the 12th house from any house. So in this video, I'm going to look at it from another point of view. To start with, let's discuss the 7th house. The 7th house pertains to one's partners, the legal bondage, the other person in your life. Therefore, the 7th house is your spouse, business partner. And if this planet happens to be just one house behind, and it's very bad because the 6th house is already declared as an unfavorable house, a dusthana, because the 6th house is associated with one's disease, debts, and enemies. Why is the 6th house more challenging with regard to the 7th house matters? That's because the 6th house happens to be the 12th from the 7th. If you count from here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Therefore, the 6th house is the 12th from the 7th. The loss of the 7th is felt more in connection to the 6th house than any other house. For two reasons, because it is the 12th from the 7th and the 6th house is already declared as a challenging house. So people who have this combination must be very careful with regard to marriage and partnership business, because eventually they'll find that they get into trouble. At least one can avoid getting into partnership ventures, cannot avoid marriage, and for that the solution is do horoscope matching prior to marriage, which should go a long way in helping you decrease the malefic effect of the 7th lord being in the 6th. It is a house of separation which may lead to divorce, mainly because a divorce is a court proceeding, something that happens in connection to the law. The 7th house is connected to the legal aspects of relationship and therefore marriage. And so this becomes, the 6th house is the house of enemies. So your spouse may become your enemy. Your spouse can take you to litigation. Your spouse may fall sick. Let's do another example. This time the ascendant is in Cancer, and therefore the house has been renumbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I placed Jupiter, the lord of the 9th, in the 9th house. One house behind it is the 8th house. Therefore the 12th from the 9th house becomes the 8th house. And the 8th house is considered as disappointment house, something that happens all of a sudden, battles, disgrace, disappointment. A lot of challenging situations in one's life has been associated with the 8th house. So apart from the very fact that the 8th house is a challenging house, the 8th house becomes more challenging simply because it is the 12th from the 9th house. You can use this idea to understand the various significations of each house. Let's do another example. In this case, the ascendant remains as Cancer ascendant, therefore the house numbers are the same. But let's study the 4th house. The 3rd house is the 12th from the 4th. If the 4th house is motherland, comforts, your comfort zone, the 3rd house is the loss to this house, the loss of comforts, going away from mother, going away from motherland. This is the house where one generally sleeps well, resting, and this is awakening. This is comfortable, this is stress, loss of comforts. 3rd house is the house of a change in environment, getting out of your comfort zone. Travel as against home, so out of home. So the 3rd house is a high stress house. Also, you can even call it an awakening period. Most people meet their spiritual guru during the planetary periods of planets placed in the 3rd house, because it wakes you up. It wakes you out of your slumber, your comfort zone. You're taken away from your comfort zone. 4th house deals with vehicles. So the sale of your vehicle lost, your vehicle taken away by someone else. Bandhu, the 4th house is called the bandhu sthana, basically relatives, and maybe the loss of a relative. A relative has gone away. I use all these examples so you can make your own rules. Once you know a concept in astrology, you can stretch it out to wherever you want, but appropriately, using logic and also considering the other rules which may contradict this. Let's do the 12th house. We've been discussing the 12th house, so why not talk about the 12th itself? So let's say the 12th house lord or the 12th house, you know that it deals with loss. So what happens if this planet is in the 12th from the 12th? So this becomes the 11th house. So losing the loss, it could be a negative into negative, which becomes positive. So the 11th house is called the house of fulfillment of desires, your wish, your ambitions, because nobody wants to lose. You always want to gain. So the loss to loss, that becomes the gain. So the 12th from the 12th house happens to be the house of gains. So this rule seems to be working very well. Not all the time it works, but at least in these cases, whichever I have done the example for, it really works. Take another case. Let's study from here the 6th house. Jupiter, the lord of the 6th. From the 6th, the 12th house is the 5th house. So we all know that the 5th house is a very auspicious house because it is a trine, it is a Lakshmi Sthana, the house of wealth. It's a Purva Punya Sthana, something which is associated with the merits of your past life. And the 6th house is connected to the demerits of one's past life. The sins are all associated with the 6th house. And the sins translate in this life as our debts, our disease, and as our enemies. And the loss of this house, the 12th from the 6th, happens to be the 5th house. So the 5th house marks the end of 6th house matters, the loss of the 6th house. Therefore, whenever you are ruled by a planet occupying the 5th house, unless it is connected to some other rule which has spoiled the 5th house, otherwise, any planet that is placed in the 5th house during its period is likely to give you an elevation, a promotion, the end of a long period of litigation, quarrel, opposition, debts. You suddenly get some reward. There's a windfall which ends everything, which ends all your financial trouble at one shot. All this is possible if a planet is auspiciously placed in the 5th house, and that's because the 5th house happens to be the 12th from the 6th. So this rule works most of the time. So therefore, you can understand that this idea of looking at the 12th from any house seems to be working at least most of the time. Let's do one more example, the 8th house. It is a challenging house because it contains a lot of problems like battles, surgery, accidents, all that is associated with suddenness. It all happens suddenly. All that is related to the 8th house. So if the 12th house from the 8th house is bad for the 8th house, the loss of this. So if you look at it from another point of view, the 8th house is also called the house of lifespan, longevity. And therefore the 12th from longevity, the 7th house becomes the house of death. It's called maraka sthana. But if you look at it from other point of view, because we don't die all the time, we just die once. So the rest of the time, the 7th house is good because it is the 12th from the 8th house. So the 7th house happens to be the 10th from the 10th house. So from 10th, you count 10 houses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You will reach the 7th house. Therefore, the 7th house is the way, a great opening. Most people start their career in the life in the dasha of the planet that occupies the 7th house. It's also the house of death because it's house of travel, and there's a possibility of great danger to life, which you have to understand by using other rules. But as I discussed, as I already told you, that death happens only once. So the rest of the time, the 7th house is actually good because it is a Kendra. 1, 4, 7, 10 are good houses. So the 7th house is one house minus the 8th, and that is the 12th from the 8th. Therefore, the 7th house is a good house. So in short, you can use this knowledge to whatever extent possible within the framework of astrology, that if you take the 12th house from any house, there is some kind of loss to that house. Let me end this video by giving you a very interesting point about the 11th house and the 10th house. By now, you should be wondering what the 10th house is, if as it happens to be the 12th from the 11th. So, the 10th must be bad with regard to the 11th house. In a way, it is because the 10th house is the house that concerns with your work, and work is not something that we all enjoy. 11th house is the reward of work, but we all want to work less and earn more. So it's obvious that the 10th house somehow does not go hand in hand with the 11th house, the fulfillment of desires. The desire is to have a long holiday. I want a holiday. I don't want to work, but I want the money. Somehow, the 10th house looks like it is the 12th from the 11th. If you look at it from another point of view, 11th house is the house of friends, and the 10th house is the house of work. So, leaving your friends, you go for your work. So, this is about your desire fulfillment, and you can't fulfill all your desires and enjoy life in the place of work. We have come to the end of this video. In case you have any doubts, please type them out in the comment section, and whenever I find the time, I'll answer them for you. And see you soon in my next video.